Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Natasha Clark and I'm the Chair of Women in Recruitment. And I'm welcoming you to this Friday's Speak Up, Stand Out session, where we hope to help you end the week feeling motivated and able to positively shape the future next week in these very uncertain times. I hope you've all been managing okay. I know for sure I found it particularly difficult this week with the prospect of another at least 3 weeks ahead of us. But this week we're lucky enough to be joined by Christie, who's founder of WiR and the Conscious Coach. And her focus is very much on well-being and how to integrate this into your life and work. And I know for me, certainly this is something that I've been struggling with over the last few weeks. I'm really looking forward to hearing what Jen is going to say to us today. So we'll be taking questions throughout the webinar. It is meant to be a short, punchy intervention to the day. So we'll probably be online for the next 30 to 40 minutes. And I'll be taking questions through the chat box. So please do, as we're talking, send any questions that you've got through on the chat box. And if appropriate, we'll ask them to Jen during the session. And if not, we'll pick them up at the end. So I hope you enjoy today. And I look forward to seeing your questions coming through. Jen, I'll pass over to you now. Thank you.
Thanks, Natasha. Hi, everyone. So thank you for having me on today. I've been asked to talk today a bit about kind of self-worth and a bit more around identifying areas of where you need to kind of trust your intuition a bit more, and kind of I'm going to talk through my personal journey as to how I set up WiR, but hopefully there might be some good little snippets that can help you during this uncertain times, kind of new normal that we're going through at the moment. So I also think it's worth mentioning that I have actually worked in recruitment for many years, so I can really understand what kind of your role's like at the moment, what you're probably going through, but also hopefully you can resonate with some of the reasons why I decided to change direction in my career. So I started off, I did my A-levels because my sister did her A-levels. I stayed on at sixth form. She went to university, my friends went to university, I went to university. Then everyone's got a job. And so I kind of just, in my younger years, just sort of followed other people and kind of didn't really know what I wanted to do, didn't really have a sense of direction. So I started age 21 at WiR Wellness. So that was in Canary Wharf and Harley Street. And what I did there was a series of health assessments for all these really seemingly successful bankers. And what was really interesting in that first role that I did was that all these people came to see me. They were really, really unhealthy and really, really unhappy. And it was really striking to me because I felt like I'd been sold a lie. I was kind of, we're all told, go to university, get well educated, go and work in the city, get a really good corporate job, you'll be really happy, you'll have the car, the house, everything. But I thought, I'm seeing these people at the height of their career and they're definitely not happy or healthy. That was kind of my kind of introduction into workplace wellbeing. I did that for a number of years, and then I worked for a company called Top Corner. So they run corporate football, netball and basketball leagues. So it was a bit of a startup business. They're now owned by Power League, which some people may know. And I did sales and marketing role there. But that is kind of where things started to go a bit wrong for me. So I was 24 at the time. This was 10 years ago now. And I worked under, I don't know if anyone knows London Bridge Station, it's obviously all been redeveloped now and it's lovely. But it used to be some old viaduct tunnels, and our office used to be in one of those viaducts. So it was dark, it was damp, there was no natural light or ventilation. And I kind of got myself in a situation and had a bit of a perfect storm of really toxic thoughts and this horrible office environment. And I was in a job where I felt totally out of my depth. I was under a lot of stress with deadlines. I didn't really quite know what I was doing. It was my first proper office sort of job. And I ended up suffering from really bad panic attacks and stress. And I think really, there's a lot of interesting parts of the story, but there is one interesting part, which is there was this guy sat next to me in this really silent office. And he breathed really loudly. I know this sounds really ridiculous. And I used to never tell this part of the story because I was too embarrassed. And I would just literally all I could hear is this breathing. I got so worked up and had my first panic attack, which frightened the hell out of me. And that's when I sought help, went to the doctors, ended up getting signed off work with stress and anxiety. Now, I felt ridiculous about this because I thought, am I having really bad stress and panic attacks about somebody breathing, which is like the most natural thing in the world? But actually, having that shame around my feelings just compounded the problem and it acted like a catalyst and it escalated. And actually now what I know is that it was nothing to do with this like really nice guy, him breathing loudly. I was already in a fight or flight situation just by being in that office and just by having a really lack of understanding of my own thoughts. So I now know it was to do with a really like a lack of understanding of my own thoughts, a real lack of self-worth in my own ability and capability, really poor office environment. There was no policies or procedures in place from the company to prevent it happening, or when it did happen, and there was no real relationship with my manager anyway. So I now know that was just a byproduct, just the breathing, but it really kind of set me on this trajectory where I wanted to learn more about myself, my thoughts. I wanted to learn more about well-being in general, mind, body, spirit, because it was such a dark, tough time that I was so embarrassed about because of the reason I thought it was, that I kind of really just wanted to get back to how I was previously. So I then ended up leaving that job after 3 long years in the tunnel, and I kept getting calls from recruitment firms because I worked, I guess, in sales, asking if I'd ever considered a career in recruitment, which I hadn't, but I saw it as an opportunity to get on a kind of a professional career path. And a lot of the other reason I was getting so worked up in my previous sales and marketing role was because I was comparing myself to all my friends who had gone straight onto graduate programs in big investment banks or big retailers or FMCG businesses. So I did feel quite inferior to my friends, and I felt like I was being left behind, which is quite an old trigger from my childhood, which is the talk for another day. But I decided to go into recruitment. I've worked for 2 global recruitment firms, and I really enjoyed it. So I worked my way up over 5 years to associate director, which was the level I always wanted to get to. But after 5 years, I kind of just started to feel like something was missing, and I started to do a lot of wellbeing initiatives for the company that I was working for. I ran a wellness week. I put in place kind of regular campaigns, did walk and talk events, all sorts of stuff, because I was just feeling like I wasn't getting enough from the job for me personally, because I was doing the same sort of thing over and over again. So I was getting really amazing feedback from employees in recruitment, kind of up saying like, this has been life-changing stuff that you've taught us and that we've been engaged with. Like, I wish we could do this more often. And I was thinking, I wish we could do this more often because I absolutely love it. And I was trying to do recruitment as well. So I was kind of doing the 2 side by side. And then I had this idea about, what if I could just do this job full time? Like, how amazing would that be? People definitely need it. And like a lot of you watching who are in recruitment, you've probably seen a shift over the past sort of 5 years. I know I did, where all my candidates just used to ask about the salary, or they used to ask about career progression. But then over the last year I was in recruitment, everyone was just asking about culture, about flexible working, about what the kind of management style's like, all of those kinds of things, all of the benefits. And they were becoming more important, or definitely as important, if not more than the money. So, and I just felt like a lot of my SME clients just weren't really offering anything, and it was just another thing HR had to do on top of their job already. They were stretched really very thin. So I thought, okay, I know recruiters, I know the stress of the job, I know the highs and the lows, I know the pressure you're under. How good would it be if we had a wellbeing strategy and I could develop and deliver that at my recruitment firm? So what I did, which is a bit ballsy, is I wrote my own job description to be the global head of wellbeing for that business. And I got all of the partners in the business to sit down with me and go through the job description and add things, tweak things, kind of get their backing. I also reached out to heads of wellbeing across the market who did a similar job to the job I wanted. So I found the woman who heads up wellbeing for Deloitte, the girl who heads up wellbeing for who else? Google, Unilever, and I met them for coffees and just had a chat with them, which was amazing. People will bend over backwards to help you. It's so humbling. I was so amazed how nice people were and how much they wanted to help me succeed. So I eventually got a meeting with our CEO and asked if I could create this job out of thin air that I'd come up with. But unfortunately he said no, which is fine. And I think, you know, looking back, there was a part of me that was probably still hanging on to the security of working for the same company and having a regular income. But actually it's really good that he didn't, because what I really needed to do was to kind of break away and do my own thing, which leads me to today, where I've set up WiR, which is a workplace wellbeing consultancy. And it's, to be honest, a huge part of this is, of course, about workplace wellbeing. It's a topic really close to my heart because of what's happened to me previously, because I know it's what people need, and I know people aren't getting it. Mental health is a massive issue in this country, and there's just so much I want to do and so many people I want to help. But the other part of this is it really is a personal journey for me. So I kind of just really listened to my intuition ultimately. I kind of just trusted that this little voice that I've always had inside me, which said you should go off and do your own thing, was what I should listen to. As a kid, I remember loving playing shop. I like playing, having little washing cars, setting up little businesses, doing car boot sales, setting up little shops in front of my house. I just loved running business, and that's a really good clue. Stuff you love doing, play you love doing as a child is a really good clue as to what you should be doing. And I loved that. I loved having like little businesses. So I knew that, but I also was very aware that my dad always used to say, I wish I'd set up my own business, but it was too late. I'd had I'm one of three girls. I'd had three girls, I had a mortgage and a wife to support. So there was a part of me thinking, are you just doing this for your dad because you've kind of heard that, you've been kind of positioned for that? But I just knew it. I knew that wasn't the case, because doing it now just feels so good, and I just had this gut feel that it was the right thing to do, so I followed it. But going back to my point about it being a personal journey, is that I had a lot of things holding me back from actually putting the plug and doing it. And the final straw, I guess, was in my 5th year of recruitment. My heart wasn't really in it, and you could tell by my results, because I wasn't billing as much as I usually did. And it was in the 3rd quarter of the last year that I had a one-to-one with my manager, and he basically said, look, like, we need to talk about your bonus. From his boss's perspective, you've had a shocking year. And I just remember, like, I just burst into tears. I got so upset, and it sounds a bit rough, bit of an idiot, but I've never heard like my name and shocking kind of in the same sentence. I'm a natural really high achiever. I always like to do my best. I always generally do pretty well, but it just made me think, are you just going to keep repeating the same thing every year and blaming other staff and acting like a victim, or are you actually going to make a choice? Because you've got a choice here. And I decided to just go for it, and take the plunge. I didn't have any business plan. I just had this knowing that there had to be an opportunity for kind of head of wellbeing job in businesses. I didn't think it was time yet, and I still don't think it's time for those jobs to be an in-house role, but I definitely think there's an opportunity to bridge the gap between now and then and almost act like a freelance head of wellbeing, which is what WiR is. So I work with businesses as a consultant to help them develop and deliver a wellbeing program or strategy. So they take me on a project basis, part-time, whatever they want to do, as opposed to hiring someone full-time. Because that's basically the job I wanted to engineer for myself, because I knew I couldn't get it because no one was hiring the job yet. but it was what I really wanted. So I really kind of took from that, you have to have a lot of self-awareness, you have to listen to your intuition. There's a lot of distractions out there, but I kind of listened to this inner voice that's always said, this is what you should go and do. And then in the end, I had to take responsibility for that. I couldn't keep kind of year in, year out, kind of going into a secure job and kind of doing what was safe, because I always knew I was staying in recruitment because for me personally, it was what I thought I should do, as opposed to what I know I kind of want to do and need to do. And there was a big difference. So yeah, I mean, I'd love to take some questions, but I think for me, it's about a personal journey, leaning into fear, which is really scary. But I had huge.
Sorry, Jen.
I was going to say I had a lot of fear around making it work, and lots of areas of low self-worth. That's what low self-worth is, basically. It's fear, and that was around that I wasn't intelligent enough to do it. I had this thing in my head that I wasn't smart enough to do it. I thought, oh my God, I'm gonna have to do public speaking, which I was petrified of at the time. I also thought, you're gonna have to trust yourself, and there's not gonna be anyone else you can rely on, because it's all gonna come down to you. And I just really felt like by setting up my business, that was my vehicle to overcoming those fears. And I knew I needed to realise my potential, because I knew I just wasn't realising it through recruitment. For me personally, like, I think I had about 35% of me was kind of my potential was like released in recruitment, whereas I knew I just needed to go out and just do my own thing. So I think, I mean, you may have some questions. I think something's just popped up, but yeah, that for me was kind of how I navigated it and how I kind of, like, mustered up the courage to do it.
Thanks, Jen. I'll just jump in if you don't mind, because there are a few questions coming through, but just before we perhaps go to some of the questions that are there, if you don't mind, I'd just like to play back a couple of things that you've mentioned that have resonated with me, and I think perhaps to put some context to hopefully the takeaways from today. Firstly, I just want to say thanks for being so humble with us, and I think your humility is very powerful. And I think once you reach inside yourself and can actually show humility and be human, that's an amazing first step on the journey. And I think the time we're in at the moment is going to allow a lot of us to look at ourselves and our colleagues as humans for a change rather than robots. And it will get us to dig a bit deeper, which I don't think is any bad thing, actually. You also touched on a couple of things that I'd like to just flag around finding a purpose. And there's a talk at the moment in the HR space around business purpose and personal purpose. And I think what I took from what you were talking about is that you don't necessarily have to leave your job or leave the industry that you're in to find your purpose, but you need to ask yourself what your purpose is. And clearly you weren't living up to that in the role that you were in. And there'll be many people at the moment who are in the right job or in a place that can give them what they need, but maybe they just aren't mentally adjusted to where they're at within the role they're in, and how they can live their purpose as well as their organisational purpose through it. So I think your choices were that you weren't in a place that could fulfil that purpose for you, and the role that wasn't available. Completely.
And that's so important. It's a lot of the work I do with my business is around purpose. So for some people it doesn't really matter what you do, it matters why you do it. So you might not love your job day in, day out, but if there's a bigger purpose behind it, so you might be doing that so that you can earn enough money to support your family, because your biggest value in life is family life and living the life you want, then that kind of gives you that sense of purpose to get up every morning. For other people, it could be the wider purpose of the company and what their overall mission is and things like that. So I was trying to get snippets of it, and I really tried to kind of get the best bits out of recruitment. And for 5 years, I did get that. Absolutely. I absolutely loved it. I learned so much. But for me, I just I just knew it was time to change. But you don't, like you said, you don't have to leave your job. You just need to kind of work out why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah. And one of the questions that's come through, Jen, might tie into this particular discussion point. And the question is, have you had that I made it moment yet? And if yes, when was it?
No, definitely not. I definitely haven't had that moment. And to me, this wasn't really about kind of money at all. It's not about having sexy client lists or anything like that. Honestly, this was to all end tomorrow. I will look back and say it's the best thing I've ever done. And I've learned more about myself in 1 year than I have in the other 33 years of my life. So I don't know if I'm ever going to think that, because I don't even know what that looks like for me. I'm not really much of a planner. I'm just kind of quite live for the moment, enjoy what I'm doing. Of course, I've got, like, financially, I need to hit certain targets, but I think it's just when I get amazing feedback from a client or an employee who said how much I've helped them, and what a difference I've made to their lives. That is the sort of stuff that I care about, and that's got nothing to do with anything else external. That's the sort of stuff that makes me feel like, oh God, like it's worth it, and I'm doing what I set out to do. Those are the moments. I don't think I'm ever going to have that I've made it. The moments where I get really excited is where I overcome my fears. So going to do a massive presentation, or trusting myself to make a decision without checking with anyone else, or when I kind of come up with a solution all by myself, and I'm kind of basically disproving all these limiting beliefs that I've had, that I've been conditioned to have through childhood. That everyone has their own set of kind of limiting beliefs, and my business is like a vehicle to kind of disprove them to myself, if that makes sense.
So somebody's actually, and whether you still have the fear, and I'm taking from what you've said that the fear perhaps doesn't go away, but you find tactics to deal with the fear and ways of overcoming it through your own sort of mindset and approach.
Yeah, so when I started, my God, I was so fearful. I remember I had to do a presentation. I was actually introducing someone to do a presentation in front of 30 HR directors, and I was only talking for about 2 minutes. It was the first time I've ever had to do it. And I remember being in Italy the week before, and I basically spent the whole holiday so worried about it, just trying to plan what I was going to say for 2 minutes. But I did it, and then I just built upon that. And what I did to start with, it was kind of, I created this thing called like a spiritual gym. So what I did every morning was reread all of my key achievements that I'd done in the past. So it was almost like, do you remember that time you did this and you were really nervous, but you still did it anyway, and you actually overcame that fear? So I had a list of all my achievements. Like, do you remember when you ran the London Marathon? You never thought you couldn't even run a mile, but you still did it. So I kind of collected all of my achievements throughout my life, personal stuff. This isn't just work, this is anything. You remember when you had that difficult conversation with someone you were really worried about, and it was fine in the end? And then just kind of, at first, I use that a lot to collect kind of evidence to be like, you can do it. And then when you start actually doing things you're scared of, because you always overcome them, then you're kind of unstoppable. And then I think someone's asked, do you still have fear? Definitely. If I do a talk, I used to be so nervous, and then I'd come off and I would be buzzing. I'd love it. And when I was little, again, I used to love performing. I used to love doing plays. I used to love an audience. And then somewhere along the line, as a kind of teenager, kind of late adolescent, very late childhood, something's happened, which I'm still investigating, and I'm enjoying it as a process. Something's happened that made me feel like I'm too shy to do it. I can't do it. I'm not a good public speaker, all of this stuff. But then when I do it, I come off and I'm like on cloud 9. But then the longer the time is in between the public speaking, I get nervous again. But if I did it 2, 3, 4 days in a row, I'm absolutely fine. I even start looking forward to it, which I never thought I'd say in a million years.
I think you're very true. I mean, that's a great, sometimes you've just got to be brave, haven't you, and confront it. And I always find when you're public speaking, if you can get over the first line, you're generally okay. It's just that moment where you've got to introduce yourself. But I think I mean, if we put what you're talking about into context of where we are today, I guess there's going to be an awful lot of people who are fearful at the moment about things that just are completely out of their control. So, you know, are they going to have a job to go back to in a few weeks' time? How's their company going to be performing? What's their marketplace going to be like? You know, are they going to be able to cope with the lockdown being on for another few weeks? And there's an awful lot of fear probably hanging over a lot of us at the minute. And being able to find ways of tackling that is really important. And one of the things we've talked about in one of the other webinars we've done is looking back at, you, as you said, look at the strengths, look at times when you've overcome things before and succeeded, and draw on that to help you get through the challenges as you face them. But also this piece around visualization and thinking about a better future and visualizing yourself in a good place, feeling good about yourself. And those are all helpful techniques, aren't they? Just another thing, Jen, that you said, which again, just in the context of where we are today, you talked about how when you got amazing feedback, it really did a lot to help your confidence and your own sense of positivity. And you know, if you think about some of the things that we can all do for each other at the moment, whether we manage people or not, we're in an environment where we're all isolated and not getting as much human interaction as we used to get, but being able to still give people feedback around the things that they're doing well and where they're making a difference, that we are able to see or observe through the ways we're working today, whether it's a colleague, a peer, whoever it might be. I mean, that's another nice way, isn't it, of keeping mindset in a space and helping each other.
Yeah, it's so, going back to your last point as well, it's a really triggering time for people. It's triggering people in different ways because it's bringing up fears around lack, insecurity, whatever it might be, and it's different for everyone, and it's being filtered and perceived differently depending on how you've been conditioned growing up. And I think, you know, you've got a choice. I mean, it's about being comfortable, being uncomfortable, and learning that as an amazing life tool, because this isn't going to be the last bad kind of uncomfortable situation unfortunately we're going to be in, because life is full of highs and lows. And this is actually, if this feels quite rock bottom for people and like a bit of a like a rock bottom, it could actually end up being a breakthrough, because you're going to learn some like resilience that you didn't know you had in the tank, that's going to equip you better for the future when other bad stuff will unfortunately crop up, because it just does. And I think it's a really amazing time to be really still. And there's like a famous quote by, I think it's Ryan Holiday, "Stillness is the key." And it's a really great time to look inwards and to kind of look at your options with everything in life, but also in terms of, and kind of look at, you know, what haven't you been happy with for a long time that you haven't been happy for a while, that you want to improve, rather than just being constantly distracted all the time, which is what we all are. So use this as a really beautiful time to kind of take a bit of inventory of your life and look at areas that you want to kind of work on. And then the other thing, in terms of what you said about bits and stuff you can do, definitely reaching out to other people who may be in a less privileged position to yourself, people who live on their own, but also the other extreme and they might be furloughed and they're on their own, so it's even worse, or people who are trying to do a full-time job and they're homeschooling 3 children. So just reaching out to people to kind of give them some support. Video calls are really important. But remember, for yourself, if you're a line manager, I know a lot of I've spoken to a lot of people, my friends in recruitment recently. Line managers are I feel for them at the moment, because they have a really important job right now to support their team, but they need to remember to support themselves, because they have a really tough job where they're kind of sandwiched in between their bosses above them and their team below them. They're getting pressure from above and they're getting pressure from below, and they're getting squeezed, and they need to look after themselves as well. And what's really important right now is to try and find your way of staying really present. So if you're thinking about the past, I don't think many people are probably thinking about the past other than thinking, oh, I wish it was this time last year when everything was so easy. That's just going to make you depressed. And if you think about the future, because we don't know what's happening, that is going to just make you anxious. Like, there's no two ways about it. Whereas if you try and work on ways for you that keep you really present, it cuts out the mind. The mind basically dies in the present, and then all you've got is peace, stillness, and contentment. But you don't get that when the mind starts coming in the past or the future. And the way in which you do that is going to be really different. Some people like meditating, some people go out and run, some people throw themselves into gardening, some people cook. There's no right or wrong answer, but it's something that makes you just really so engrossed in what you're doing that nothing else comes in. And if it does, it kind of goes away straight away.
Thanks, Jen. And I think actually that point's really important. And I often talk about that in the context of just keeping yourself the best person that you can be regardless, because even when we come out of this, hopefully some people will have found ways of keeping themselves present that they didn't know about before. So we'll have found a way of switching off, being to take themselves to that place where they can refresh and keep themselves alive. So I think sometimes we get so caught up, as you were saying, in the world that we're in, we do forget to look after ourselves. So the one great thing that could come is that we find those things that do that for us and carry on doing them.
And we really don't have as much control as we think we do. And as humans, we're constantly trying to evaluate the future and kind of work everything out, because that's the way we're designed, because it makes us feel safe. And that's why everyone is constantly watching the news and talking about it. But actually, we don't have really that much control. We don't have control of this. And we don't have control of a lot of things, to be honest. All you can control, which is your like kind of wild card, is that you get to control your attitude and your approach to this. And you've got two options. You can either throw yourself into the news and the craziness of it, or you can just decide to kind of do the work and work hard and learning how to be present for you. And the last thing I'd say is, like, no one's got this figured out at all. No one is nailing isolation at all. And there's a lot of people putting pressure on themselves as well to kind of, like create an amazing side hustle or lose loads of weight or, do all these do loads of house renovations. Like, I really need to make the most of this time off. But actually, just do you, like, just do what's right for you. There's no right or wrong answer, and really trust yourself.
Thanks, Jen. And just before we wrap up and close the session today, we've had a question come in, which I think is a nice way to close this, is, do you recommend any great apps, books, podcasts that you found particularly useful that others might want to go and explore?
Yeah, where do I start? Okay, so if I'm trying to be simplify it. Okay, my favorite app is the Calm app for meditation. Some days I really like guided meditation, so I like to use that. Deepak Chopra at the moment has got a free 21-day meditation with Oprah Winfrey, which is good. You can download that app for free as well. And then that's probably apps that I love. Podcasts, I listen to quite a lot. I really enjoy the Goop podcast with Gwyneth Paltrow, and I really enjoy Fern Cotton's Happy Place, and Russell Brand, because he's I can't remember what his podcast is called. And then books, I'm reading at the moment The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
No, that's good.
Amazing. It cannot be a better book to be reading right now. So I definitely recommend that too.
Thank you, Jen. And actually, I think it was last week or the week before, we actually had Rhonda D'Ambrosia on this session talking about the Kite app, which she's just launched in the UK, which is a wellness app and an app that takes you through a number of sort of self-development areas to help create positive mindset and well-being. So that's something else that actually is quite new out, and I know a number of people have started using that since Rhonda spoke about it, and certainly I've looked at some of the content and think it's really quite relevant to the moment if people would like to explore that further. But Jen, thank you very much for your time and for sharing your personal story. One of the best ways I think to help ourselves is to tell stories and be real that are grounded in truth. So thank you so much. And wish you every success with getting through this time and coming out, and hopefully your business will take you where you want to go. Thank you all so much.
Thank you for being on
Have
it.
Friday, everybody. Next week we'll be coming back together and we'll be joined by Anne Gahard-Kenwood, who's a Senior Director and Board Member at Investigo, and she'll be talking about how to thrive and survive in the current climate. So another opportunity to share some real stories. So have a good week and take care.
Have a nice weekend. Bye.
Bye-bye.